have no smoke, and therefore I have no intro.
You
Welcome to
an
well,
Obi-Wan.
here we go. And here we go again, another episode of What's Good Under the Hood. Rob 2 is Rob Sanders from AM 1400 Fox Sports Radio. And across from Rob, the owner of Mazda of Columbia, it's Greg Hood. Greg, what is good under the hood?
Man, I'm good under the hood. That's what's
Well,
good.
I did think about something I wanted to get deeper into, because I was driving the other day and I was driving behind a car from the past. It was a Probe, and I started thinking, God, what a fail as far as naming a model of a car. Number one, how do they do it? Number two, don't they pay attention to what they're naming a car? Who would name a car a Probe? It always brings up like a colonoscopy thought.
Oh. Well, I think having that car was like a colonoscopy, if I remember correctly.
It may have been.
They actually had one with a V6 that was pretty cool, but the little four bangers were a terrible car. And that was also, I don't know if you remember, but Mazda had a sister car to it. That was when Ford and Mazda were attached. And I don't remember what the model was, but anyway, it wasn't a Probe. I'll tell you that right now. You have the Probe at home, and that's nice.
Can you think of any other fails, Rob? Maybe either Rob or Greg. Can you think of any other names that were just inappropriate?
I didn't want to call out Greg for being the oldest of the group here, but he may remember this car because, he may have been selling cars back then. I watched the documentary that HBO had on I guess it was the Dale, did you see that where it was the whole story of, it was a woman, but she was ended up being a man at one point. And we don't have to get into that, but
wait a minute, a transgender car?
That's topical.
No, well, no, I'm not
seems
trying to get sick here. I mean, seriously though, but I mean, you remember the story about the car, the Dale that she designed, and or am I just going,
I have no idea what you're talking about. And listen, I've been a car nut my whole life. My dad and I used to go collect brochures. As a matter of fact, I have 3 big plastic tubs that are full of brochures from when my dad was a kid: Kaisers, Frasers, Hudson's, you name it, old Porsche brochures, De Tomaso Pantera. I've got all kinds of stuff. He and I used to go collect too.
I've got one for you. Do you remember a car called a Morris Minor?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Morris Minor. We had one of those when I was a kid. They didn't have enough power to make it up a hill with more than one person in the car.
The motor was either 1,000 or 1,100 cc. I mean, it was the same motor that was in an MG Midget, and they were not brisk. That would be
drove they loaded up the family. We drove all the way from Montreal, Canada to Cleveland, Mississippi in a Morris Minor. Made the entire way.
They made a little Morris Minor that was a Woody. And they're kind of valuable. They're cute. Don't get crazy now. Different kind. No, they were actually pretty neat. Those and a Mini and all that kind of stuff. I like the original Minis. I think those are a great car. But yeah, Morris Minor, they're British Leyland, which is MG and Triumph and Jaguar and all that stuff back then. And
Triumph was a cool car.
Some of them. There were a few that the TR7 I wouldn't put into the awesome car category.
Yeah.
TR8 was a TR7 with a V8 in it. That wasn't so bad. They made a weird car. It was called the Stag, and a friend of mine's mom had one, and they were a upper end Triumph, and they had a V8 in them, a dual overhead cam V8. They sounded really, really good. They had chrome wire wheels on them, and most of them, some had alloys and they didn't look as good. When they had the chrome wires, and they looked good, and they had a roll bar that went over the top of them that was kind of odd, but they were a neat driving car. But they didn't really ever take off. That Jensen Healy and that kind of stuff. So there's been some weird cars.
What about the DeLorean then? You had to see a DeLorean.
Oh, I've driven a DeLorean. They're awful. That was a Volvo V6 that was in those things. They're just absolutely a POS. I mean, that was a terrible car. The coolest one I ever saw was somebody, partly organic. I don't know.
Whatever.
I saw one that somebody had painted. And I know that's kind of against the whole theory of having a stainless steel car. But when they painted it, it was dark blue. It was beautiful. I mean, the car just was stunning. But it devalued it to nothing, which I think they're not too far from nothing. I think you could buy one for probably 15, 20 grand. they never really accelerated in value, and they're just an awful car. I'll tell you, speaking of awful cars, the Pontiac Aztec. So I was a general sales manager of a Pontiac Olds GMC store in Sacramento years and years ago. And the Pontiac Aztec came out, and I'd heard some rumor, and I think it's correct, that it was designed by Consensus. They would have groups that would get these focus groups that would get together and talk about the needs. And if you really looked at the car, it was kind of the start of the sport utility in some weird kind of way. But it was, I'm not going to use that word. It was ugly. Let's just put it that way. If you guys can all remember.
I just found it. I just found it on. Yeah, that's
it
not
was
real
horrible.
pretty.
And so they delivered them to the dealerships, and then they sent in these kits where the back hatch goes up and a board and a tent went in it, and you would have a tent hanging off the back of the car. And they thought that was going to be just this revolutionary thing that you can take it everywhere. And they were a turd with wheels.
Okay, found that too.
There you go. Isn't that unbelievable? That
I
was
would like
and
to
they
have that.
They thought they had just developed sliced bread right there. They thought they had it all, and we couldn't give them away.
Okay.
Yeah, isn't that lovely?
There's a guy enjoying like a camping experience.
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't get him home. That was the problem. They were just bad. I also heard another rumor, and I don't know if it's true, and it might be one of those urban legends, but I don't remember who was the running GM at the time, but they said one guy left and a new CEO came in, and supposedly he made the executives drive those things because they had the dumb decision to make them. But I don't know if that's right. It just sounds good. You know, some executive.
Any car you can attach a tent to the back of it, I'm all about that.
Well, you know, they make kits that you can put them on top of them. And as a matter of fact, my brother and sister-in-law have some kind of apparatus that goes on their vehicle on the top of it, hangs off the back. And that's their idea of camping. And God bless them. They like to hike and do all kinds of stuff, and it meets their needs and they like it, but I wouldn't do it. So, but there's a lot of weird, other than the probe, I can't think of any inappropriate names. I will tell you this. I think that manufacturers come up with some bizarre names that really don't mean much. I mean, if you go back to a Kia Sophia, what's a Sophia?
I think they went with the rhyme on that just to make it catchy, maybe. I don't know.
I thought that was the lady that made my eggs.
Yeah, Sophia. That's right. Yeah.
What eggs?
Man, that's beautiful. Speaking of that, are you eating eggs, trying to keep yourself all proteined up? Or are you still lifting weights? What are you doing?
I agreed to do another competition in February, so I gotta.
So since we talked about it in an early podcast about you doing your competition, we never addressed the fact that you actually were successful, but you didn't break the record because you touched your leg.
Yeah, when you lift in powerlifting, if you touch the top part of your leg above your knees with the bar, it's like they penalize you for that. And so
you had the record weight up, you just happened to touch your leg.
Yeah, I got what's called faulted, which is a no lift, but I held the weight. I mean, I picked it up off the floor. So
577 pounds.
582 is what I picked
582.
Up. Yeah,
which is more than one of our coworkers' cars weighs.
So the moral to the story is don't touch your leg.
Yeah, don't touch any legs. Legs get you in trouble. Grandpa taught me.
Yeah, don't be touching the legs. That's a bad deal.
It's a bad deal. I have to show you this picture of this Dale car because it looks like it's like 3 wheels. It's a weird looking car, and it's not something that I made up. I'll show you, and then maybe we talk about the next show. But you mentioned
you got a picture of it. Have you ever heard of a Borg Ward?
No.
A Borg Ward. So it's BORGWARD. It was a German car, and they actually were a kind of a luxury vehicle, sort of back then. I think they're intending to compete with Mercedes and all that. And a funny story about a Borg Ward is my dad worked for the California Department of Transportation. It ended up being Caltrans, but back in the day, he was working in Fresno as a right-of-way agent, and he came out into the parking lot, and I hope I get this story right, but I think I'm right. He came out into the parking lot, and there was a guy next to him that had a Borg Ward, and the car wouldn't start. And my dad was talking to him, and he says, I'll tell you what, if you got $1, I'll sell you this car right now. My dad pulled out $1 and gave it to him, and that didn't run, right? So he goes and gets a battery and puts it in it, and it cranks right up and it runs. And he gave it to my cousin, Johnny. And I think Johnny had it for quite a while and drove it, but they're uglier than a mud fence. They got a big diamond in the middle of the grill. And but the car served him well, especially for $1. I thought that was a terrific deal.
It's a great
So,
deal.
A
There you go.
mud fence.
Uglier than a mud fence. Yeah, no, but you got to look up a.
Right.
Are you showing me a mud fence?
There's the Dale.
That's
the
the
Dale.
that's not even a car.
It looks like an anteater.
Yeah, you know what? There's one over in Chapin. If you go out, oh man, what road is it?
There it is again.
It's out on one of the points out there. I think if you go past, what marina is that?
There's another Dale car right there.
If you go out past Epting's Landing, there's one sitting out in the weeds, right out there. But that was was an electric car.
I don't know what it is. It's just
It's
like,
a three-wheeled pile of garbage. Yeah, I wouldn't call that a car. That didn't qualify.
It's a
that's
pile of garbage.
That's kind of like calling.
I'm going to stop bringing things to the show because my stuff is fake.
Fake news, Rob. Now, listen, you know what? People need to learn about ugly, hideous things that people attempted to be a car. I didn't know you called it a Dale, though, but I've seen them.
That's what it was called, was the Dale.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Now, I'll watch it on TV. Don't get upset.
Okay, it's no problem. I think, what was the Tucker? Remember that one?
It had wood panel sides, didn't it?
No, they didn't have wood panel. Tucker didn't have wood panels. They had the light in the middle of the grill and that turned when you turned, and the engine was in the back, if I remember correctly. And they were kind of interesting car, and that was a big deal where he was coming up with a revolutionary car and competing against the big three, and they kind of squashed him.
I remember this. It was a movie, wasn't it? Didn't they do a movie?
Yeah. Pretty good movie.
Yep.
Pretty good. I don't other than Talladega Nights, I don't know any other really good car movies.
No, Talladega Nights was funny as hell. Love that movie.
It was very funny.
Rob, any more car movies that you dig? Remember there was one way back with a Volkswagen Beetle, wasn't that the race car? What was that movie?
The Love Bug.
The Love Bug.
I like Gone in 60 Seconds.
That was a good one.
Cars in one night.
So there was a great movie called Used Cars. If you ever want to entertain yourself, that was pretty funny. They had a guy, I think Kurt Russell was in that, and a bunch of guys, but they were just slimy used car guys, but he'd see a customer on the lot across the street, and so he had a fishing pole, and he would cast a dollar bill over onto the lot right in front of the guy. So the guy'd been down to pick it up, and he'd give it a tug, and pretty soon he'd end up following the dollar bill or whatever it was across the street onto his lot. I thought that was absolutely classic.
That is
What's it called? What's it called?
Used Cars.
Used Cars. I'm Netflixing it now. See if I can find it.
Yeah, well, it was I think worth watching once or twice. It was kind of spoofy, on the car business, but it was pretty funny.
Go ahead.
I was big into Gone in 60 Seconds, where they stole all the cars in one night just because of all the cars that they got. The Hummer and the Mustang and all that. That was just really cool to me.
Wasn't that with that guy that was also in Con Air on it? What was his name? What's his name?
I don't know, but that happens every night in Miami. I'm telling you. I know I interrupted you, but when I ran a Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram store, one of the things you had to worry about was where the Hellcats were, and that's the Challenger or Charger with the 707 horsepower motor, but they had really nice wheels and tires, and you'd come to work and they're all sitting on blocks because they'd steal. But if you were in Miami, they'd just take the whole cars. They'd take 5, 6 of them at a time. So, and they were faster than the cars in Gone in 60 Seconds. So that even made it more exciting. But Miami is the wild east, southeast, not the Wild West.
Hey, we're talking about cars here and stuff like that, but maybe on our next episode, we could figure out, maybe we could guess what each of us would like to have, and then you could tell us what your dream car is. Because I imagine that my dream car is different than what you two guys have for your dream car.
I want one of the Dales. I want one of those anteater cars.
I think I'm going to get you one. I know exactly what my dream car is. And it's one, I'm not going to tell you what it is. We'll save it till next time, but I will tell you this. I was talking to a very close friend of mine, and she said to me, well, why don't you just get one? And I said, because there is no way in my mind I will justify spending $145,000 on a car. Just me personally. I mean, could I do it? Yeah. I just think I'd be a fool. I mean, you can get a lot of car for under 100 guaranteed. So, you know, and I don't, my pick isn't some wild exotic. It's
Can I
a nice
raise my
car.
hand for a second and say, my house didn't cost us 145. I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, I like to think we have a
Mine
nice
either. So it's all right. You know, my goal is to come home with, and I used to say it all the time. If I won the lottery, you know, I'd come home with cars that cost twice as much as my neighbor's house, you know, just to piss them off, and I'd stay living there. So just let them know I had a bunch of money. But since I don't, then we just got to go with what we got. But then I mean, I love cars, love them, but everything has just changed to where certain cars are unobtainium, and they're unobtainium whether they're new, used, it doesn't make any difference. You know, I'm a Porsche guy from when I was a kid, and you know, my dad had them. I've had quite a few 911s, and I absolutely love the car. But you know, a 1973 911T right now, with the right setup, CIS fuel injection, all that kind of stuff, they're $65, $70, $80, $90,000, depending upon the miles and conditions. That's insane. I think they were only 9 or 10 new. So, you know, it's a challenge.
Well, there you go. So next time we'll find out about our dream cars here. There
And
you
we
go.
may even talk about what we were going to talk about on this one, credit scores. We got wrapped in other fun stuff and sort of wandered down the rabbit hole. But it was
There
fun
you
today,
go.
fellas. This
All
has
right.
been good.
Thank you.
It's What's Good Under the Hood. Rob Sanders, Greg Hood, and me, Andy Woods. Thanks for hanging out with us again today.